trial for me is very much barely started. You know, the jury selection is one thing. You know, I don't think they can get a fair jury in Manhattan, but, you know, we're beyond that now. The opening statements, I think, framed the issues for both sides. Now we're actually going to get into the evidence. And what we're going to hear is that documents were categorized by a low-level bookkeeper at the Trump organization based on checks that the president had signed. And, you know, I think in my mind, that's where the case sort of starts to fall apart, because they have to hang all of this behavior, all of these acts on President Trump, or he had to have directed it. And then he was president of the United States. And I can't highlight enough also that the person that gave the opening statement yesterday for Alvin Bragg's Manhattan DA's office is a guy named Matthew Colangelo. And, you know, he was at the Biden Department of Justice. He was kind of making sure that, you know, the special counsel was directed in the right directions, you know, both on the documents in Florida case and on the January 6th case. Then he went to the Letitia James office and made sure that the civil fraud case was buttoned up and ready to go. And now he's over at the Manhattan DA's office. He is the connective tissue. When Donald Trump talks about election interference and directed by the Biden administration, this attorney, Matthew Colangelo, is the one who connects all of this and has really been directing traffic to make sure all of these cases proceed against Donald Trump and keep him off the election.
Yeah, that sounds like collusion at worst, and maybe at the very least coordination between the White House, Merrick Garland, the DOJ, and what we're seeing play out in Lower Manhattan. Matt, I always love having you on just because I like to pick your brain. It's not every day that you get to talk to a former attorney general. And
I'm going to have to start charging you, Rob.
I think I'm surprised you haven't at this point. You've been coming on for years. But you know, you and I have talked about cameras in the courtroom. And on the heels of the death of O.J. Simpson a couple weeks ago, you know, we had that conversation again. It really makes a difference to have cameras in a courtroom. However, after we missed the opening statements yesterday, you know, we've got to hear what happened via reporters. I'm wondering if cameras not being allowed in the courtroom could actually work in Trump's favor, because people don't get to see a former U.S. president sitting there looking like any other defendant in a courtroom.
No, I mean, that's a good point. However, they also miss so much of the nuance, so much of the witnesses and how they come off. If you remember Fani Willis, and when she stormed into the courtroom ready to testify after Nathan Wade had testified. I mean, I think there's so much you miss, and then you have somebody like Rachel Maddow who's able to come out and characterize and somehow put, you know, the contrast of Donald Trump and his luxury brands and his hotels and his, you know, grand entrances to his buildings in contrast to a courtroom that, you know, has essentially been run into the ground by, you know, underinvestment by Democrat mayors and, you know, governing officials. So, you know, to me, it very much is in who's reporting it, and that's why I like cameras in the courtroom. But, you know, this is the best we're going to be able to do in this, and unfortunately, really all of these proceedings are going to be done without cameras, because the federal proceedings, if they happen this year, are also not going to have cameras. So we're just going to have pool reporters and producers telling us what's happening and characterizing it, and, you know, and having, you know, trial artists try to capture it, but it's not going to capture 10% of actually what's going on.
Yeah, Charlotte and I were saying these trial artists have done a great job. They really, I don't know why we're using these artists. Like, we have cameras. They can just take photos. Look at these sketches. Like, who's that? Right?
It's very good.
They're doing it really fast, Rob.
Yeah.
So
true.
no cameras in the courtroom, but so many cameras out of the courtroom. Right now, the media cannot get enough of this. But because there are no cameras inside, do you think the media tires of this sooner than expected?
No, I don't. And this is probably the one advantage that Donald Trump has, is every day he gets to go into the courtroom, give a framing speech, come out of the courtroom, give a framing speech. It's going to be covered. He's communicating with large numbers of people that he couldn't otherwise do. And I will continue to say that, you know, you contrast that with Joe Biden and just hit how low energy, how uncertain he is, not only on his feet, but with his words. And I just think, you know, no matter what's going on, you know, Donald Trump is going to be able to communicate his campaign message. But, you know, he's also not able to go in person and to get the large crowds.